Welcome to the Movie Pick, where my dad and his co-host do a deep dive on their favorite movies and all the things they love about them. Hope you enjoy this week's Movie Pick, recorded in Jet Studios, and give us a rating, but only if it's a good one.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is for you. Welcome into the Movie Pick. First off, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving this episode a little bit of your time. Today, we are talking about the June 29th, 2005, way underrated H.G. Wells based from 1898, which is crazy. But the H.G. Wells based War of the Worlds. And that's a hard one to say really fast. So I had to slow down there. But directed by two all-stars, or not directed by two all-stars, but two all-stars involved in this. You got Steven Spielberg, you got Tom Cruise as Ray. And so even when you look at the poster, like that's one of the really cool moves of the poster, which great movie poster. I would encourage anybody to go back and look, just do a Google image of the poster, but it says Tom Cruise really big, Steven Spielberg presents, directed by Steven Spielberg, something like that. But just putting those two names on there, because they had previously done Minority Report together, like 3 years prior. But this also stars great cast, Dakota Fanning, who was like in everything at this point in time. Like if there was a child actor needed for a movie, she was like number one on the list. So she was in this. She played his daughter, Rachel. Tim Robbins in a part that was almost apparently Bill Murray's, as Harlan, the crazy guy in the basement towards the end of the movie. But I don't know if I could picture Bill Murray in that part, but I think it would have been an interesting take. I don't think he would have had the physical menace that Tim Robbins had, but it would have still been interesting. Miranda Otto as Marianne, and apparently Spielberg talked her into doing this movie. She was pregnant while filming and at first said, no, I can't do it. And they wrote her pregnancy into the script because he wanted her to do the movie so bad. And then Justin, I think I'm saying this right, Justin Chatwin as Robbie. And that's his son, who is by far one of the most frustrating characters in this movie. But getting to it, first memories of this movie, unfortunately, like when I think this was a theater movie for me, but when I think about this movie, I think about Tom on the Oprah couch, and because this was like right around the same time when he was promoting this, and apparently like Spielberg distanced himself a little bit from him after this or after the Oprah incident. But if you want to do yourself a treat, just YouTube Tom Cruise, Oprah Winfrey, and you'll see some pretty funny stuff. But again, back to the first memories of this, Spielberg movies always feel like an event. They always feel like something cool is coming. And the reason that this one was brought to my mind was Disclosure Day just came out a couple months ago, just showed up to rent recently. And so I was like, you know what? I want to do one of the Spielberg Alien movies. And this is the one I chose. 2005 World Series, White Sox over the then National League Houston Astros. But at the box office, not in the World Series, but at the box office, you had number 5, Wedding Crashers. You had number 4, Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Great story, awesome book. I love the first one in that series. The rest of them were mediocre to bad, but the first Narnia, I would encourage anybody to go back and watch it. Great movie. War of the Worlds was number 3 at the box office. Goblet of Fire, Harry Potter, I think that's Quattro. I think that's number 4. So Harry Potter 4 was number 2, and then Revenge of the Sith, the one when Annie becomes Darth Vader. So Revenge of the Sith was sitting at number 1. But the tagline for this movie, the number 3 movie from 2005, tagline for this movie, they're already here. With a 6.6 IMDb rating. Like I was really kind of disappointed in the rating. But then when I really, really watched it, like I've seen this movie a bunch. This is one of my daughter's favorite movies. But when I when I really, really paid attention, I could see where it's more of a 6.5 to six, like it got the 6.6. I could see where it's more of a 6.5 rather than a 7 or above. I count the sevens as extremely solid. And anything over 8 is like masterpieces. 1 hour and 57 minutes. Thought the screen time, thought the run time was crisp, good. We'll get to some of the criticisms of the movie later, but I thought the runtime was good. This was a rare one, especially for a movie that did so well, especially for a blockbuster. This had a 76% tomato meter and a 42% popcorn meter. The tomato meter, the critics, popcorn, the people. Usually movies like this would be flipped. Like you would think like Transformers, where it's going to get 42% tomato, 76% popcorn. This movie had the flip action where the critics liked it more than the people, and yet it was a blockbuster. But thought this was really cool. Came across this first time I came across this, so I was kind of excited about it. So from the 2000s, like the aughts, I think it's called, from 2000 to 2009, the top UMR. So UMR, never come across this before, came across it this week, Ultimate Movie Rankings Score, which is a combo of box office, reviews, and awards. So Tom Cruise in the UMR was number 2 in the aughts. He was barely beat out by DiCaprio. But listen to this, the top 5 were, for the aughts, were Orlando Bloom, number 1 box office guy for that decade. He can think like Lord of the Rings, Pirates of the Caribbean. He had some big ones in there. But so the top 5 UMR though: Orlando Bloom, Tom Hanks, Russell Crowe, Tom Cruise, Leo DiCaprio. Great list. Like, and if you think back and you go look at those guys' movies from that decade, there's some fantastic films in there, and a lot of Spielberg stuff in there too, especially between DiCaprio, Cruise, and Hanks. But this was Spielberg's 3rd Alien movie, after Close Encounters, which I like that movie, but I could see where somebody would tell me they didn't. And E.T., all-time classic. That was actually the movie I was really going back and forth between doing War of the Worlds or E.T. I threw it in my family group text, asked them what they thought I should do. They picked War of the Worlds, so here we are. But the 2000s, listen to the 2000s for Spielberg. He had AI, the one with Haley Joel Osment, Minority Report, Catch Me If You Can, Terminal, War of the Worlds, Munich, and then closed out the decade on a low note, Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. We'll just let that sink in for a second. Tom in the 2000s, though, he likes his alien movies. Like he had done, now this was in 14 and like 13, but Edge of Tomorrow and Oblivion. But listen to his 2000s. So MI2, Mission Impossible 2, Vanilla Sky, Minority Report, a cameo in Austin Powers, loved it. Last Samurai, just rewatched that one recently. That movie hit the list of movies to do. That movie hit the list quickly when I rewatched it. I was like, okay, that one is going on my list. So Last Samurai, Collateral, love that movie. It is VidAngelable. I would check that out. That one's probably going to be on the list too. War of the Worlds, Mission Impossible 3, which is the one where they started to kind of change the action up a little bit for the Mission Impossibles. And then Lion for Lambs, Tropic Thunder, had a cameo in it, which is where I think he kind of got the Digger character a little bit, it looks like, for his new movie that's coming out, and Valkyrie, which Digger, if you don't want your kids to hear some words, don't even watch the trailer. There's even a red band trailer. But he closed out the decade too on a high point with Valkyrie. Now, we talked about Dakota, so let's talk about Dakota Fanning for a second. Where was she at this point? I Am Sam, Sweet Home Alabama, Uptown Girls, Cat in the Hat, which I think either Uptown Girls or Cat in the Hat was the first thing I saw her in, but then this one right before War of the Worlds, Man on Fire. Love that movie. Go check that one out. Great Denzel Washington movie. But some things that I love about this movie. So if we're kind of getting to the categories of, okay, what is it that makes me revisit War of the Worlds besides my daughter loving it? What is it that I like about this movie? So this was a movie that Cruise wanted to do. Spielberg was working on Munich, or about to start working on Munich. And instead, after they had done Minority Report together, Cruise wanted to do another movie with Spielberg. And so had like three scripts. I think they picked War of the Worlds. Tom put off Mission Impossible 3 to do this, and Spielberg put off Munich to do this. It was a really short filming. They had like one of the shorter filmings. And so, that's one of the things that might be a complaint. Spielberg said it was not an issue, but they wrapped this movie in just a few months. But one thing I love about this, Tom isn't really the good guy. Like his character Ray isn't really the good guy. A lot of times in a Tom Cruise movie, he's the hero. He's the guy, that's got it all together. Like we're kind of used to the Ethan Hunt or the Pete Mitchell or Maverick version of Tom Cruise. This isn't that guy. He's just a guy trying to survive and save his kids. And it already seems like in the beginning, or not seems, he's not a very present dad. He's not a very present husband. You can tell by his relationship with his ex-wife. You could tell by his relationship with his kids. And like the heroes in this are usually like police officers or somebody in the military, and this guy's just a guy. So that was kind of interesting to watch. And it's even like, spoiler alert at the end, he's not even the guy that really saves the day. I mean, he saves them from the one tripod that picks them up, but he isn't like the, I don't know what you call it, like master savior or the ultimate hero of the movie. Another thing I love about this, I'm in on just about any alien movie where they're funny or scary. Like, I love all of them. I mean, if you talk about Independence Day, Men in Black, Quiet Place, Alien, just watch Project Hail Mary, throw that on your list to watch. Great movie. But just about any alien movie, I love watching. Loved the tripod design for the aliens. Thought it was really awesome. Even if the aliens themselves, to me, were a little bit underwhelming. They kind of had a little bit of that Independence Day alien look. One cool nod at the end, did not want to forget this. A guy named Gene Barry and Ann Robinson. A lot of people wouldn't know those names, but they were stars from the original 1953 movie. And they played Mary Ann's parents at the end. So when Ray and Rachel show up at the end in Boston, the grandparents that are there at the door, those are the original stars from the 1953 movie. Another cool thing about this movie, the neighborhood plane crash scene. So the production crew, they bought a retired Boeing 747, and it cost like $2 million to transport this thing. They took it apart, put it in several pieces, and built houses around it. And you can still visit that set at the Universal Studios in Hollywood, California. Just thought that was really cool, and how they did that set. And that is one of the craziest scenes. Now, if we're talking about things we don't like about the movie, it was really convenient that their van was still in good shape right after all that destruction. But anyway, the floating bodies when Rachel annoyingly walks down to the river. I mean, I know that a young girl would not want to use the bathroom in front of her dad and her brother, but this isn't really the time or place to just be running around. And so when she walks down to the river, the floating bodies scene, Spielberg left that ambiguous and did not want people to know like where those bodies came from. And so I just thought that was a really interesting move. You can kind of make your own theory about where the bodies came from. Another fun Spielberg move. And again, if you've listened to this pod, if this is your first episode and you go back, you'll figure out I'm a big Spielberg fan. If you know me though, you know I'm a big Spielberg fan. Another Spielberg move during the attack on the ferry scene, when it's being filmed in a giant water tank. You can really tell, like when it shows them from up above, you can tell it's a water tank and not actually in a lake or anything. But Spielberg played the Jaws music on the underwater speakers just to mess with Tom Cruise and Dakota Fanning and the other actors. Like, I just thought that was a cool nod. I did like that there's a lot of, hey, that person parts in this movie. Amy Ryan as his neighbor. That's our future Holly Flax or Holly Scott from The Office. A guy named Rick Gonzalez as Vincent. He was one of the neighborhood guys. He's from Old School and Coach Carter. Um, there's a lady named Lisa Ann Walter as Cheryl. She's the one that's trying to get on the ferry. We know her, so we watched the show Abbott Elementary. She's really funny on that show. And then apparently, both times I watched this week, I tried to look for these people. Julie White, which is Shia LaBeouf's mom in Transformers, or Sam Witwicky's mom in Transformers. Hilarious in those movies. She's somewhere in this, which made a little sense because Spielberg was the executive producer on Transformers. Shameless plug. Go back and listen to that episode. Matthew and Corey did a great job with that one. But Julie White is somewhere in this movie. And then here's the crazy one. I never saw it either. Channing Tatum is one of the guys he was like a kid then, or really young then. He was a boy. He's credited as boy in the church cameo. So somewhere in that scene where everything's starting to fall apart, in the very beginning, when we get our first glimpse of the tripods, apparently Channing Tatum's running around somewhere in there. I did like, and this is another Spielberg move, like the redemptive arc for Rey. The turning point for Rey, to me, felt like it was when Robbie wanted to join the army. So if you go back and you watch this movie, when Robbie wants to join the army and they were driving through, like the army was driving right past him, or the military was driving right past him, and he wanted to join with them. And then Rachel, Dakota Fanning's character, starts freaking out and saying, "Who will take care of me if you leave?" And then Robbie picks her up. And then Rey is kind of left standing there awkwardly and should be the one that she's running to. But that's when he lets Robbie drive after that, which turned out to be a big mistake because Robbie just annoyingly drives into a group of people. Like, wouldn't you see the people ahead and just stop and say, "Hey, Dad"? But that's also right after that when he fights with everything in him to save Rachel from the people that are trying to steal their van. So I felt like if you watch the movie with that lens of Rey is kind of, and I don't know why they chose our names for all of them for characters, because it just makes it so hard to keep up. But for me, it is like keeping up with Rey, Robbie, Rachel. But when you're looking at it, that's when he fights his hardest to get her back. Now, a little nod to the book and to the original, the wheel spin, the bicycle wheel spin that the alien does in Harlan's basement, Tim Robbins' character. That's a nod to the book when the Martians, they were Martians in the original. They did not use Martians for this. They just kind of let them be, somewhere from space. They didn't use any kind of spinning wheels or gears. So the wheel was new to them. So when they look at that and they kind of spin it around, that's why they did that. But another thing I thought was cool, brand spot of the week. We don't do that every week, but a brand spot of the week. You might think it's Robbie's Mizuno glove. You might think that, but you would be wrong. The Mizuno glove that he wears during his Red Sox versus Yankee game of catch with his dad, which is like the ultimate dig at your dad. If your dad was a Yankees fan and you're trying to be rebellious, becoming a Red Sox fan is the way to do it. But the brand spot of the week was mentioned by our girl Rachel, TiVo. So TiVo started in 99. And get this is what's crazy to me. It was discontinued in October of 2025. I would have thought it was discontinued like in 2008. I didn't know they were still around. It was like a VCR without having to fool with cassettes, like if you remember TiVos, and it recorded like your favorite shows and those kind of things. I remember my sister loving it. She had one of those. But much like our beloved Blockbuster, it was knocked out of business by Netflix. Which, again, since we're talking about streaming for a second, this is a great time to do our commercial for the week, which is one of our affiliates, or we're an affiliate of VidAngel. And so if you're not familiar with VidAngel, you can use their service to filter out anything that you want to filter out of a movie or show. It doesn't work for every single movie, doesn't work for every single show, but it works for a lot of them. And one thing I love about it is it lets you house all of your streamers within one app. So if you go to vidangel.com, you sign up for it. You can attach your Netflix, you can attach Peacock, you can attach Prime, AMC Plus, a lot of different ones. But if you go to vidangel.com and you sign up, use our promo code MoviePick1215. Makes us look good. Plus, it also gives you 30 days free as opposed to 7. So again, MoviePick1215 is what you want to use for that promo code. Now, let me get a sip of coffee before we address the criticisms. So, criticisms for this movie. Unlikable family dynamics. Like when I literally just Googled this, like why do people, because when you look at this movie, like there's a lot of, I wouldn't say hate on it, but there's a lot of like, so I'll look it up. One of the first things that pops up is unlikable family dynamics. And it says people found Tom Cruise's flawed everyman character abrasive. I disagree with that. Like I did not find it abrasive. I found it like this is just a normal, you're showing me a normal story. You're showing me a normal person. I do think, and this was my complaint against their complaint, I think if you put somebody like Bruce Willis or you put somebody like Keanu Reeves in the role, I think people don't complain about it. I think it's just because Tom Cruise was playing against character, and they would have seen like a little more realism maybe from like somebody like those actors. But I just disagreed. And another thing I said was his ungrateful children, particularly Robbie. That I get. I like the actor. I think he did a great job with the part, but the character himself could be frustrating at times. I did like Rachel. I know she screamed. I know she did some of the stuff that could be annoying, but she's also like a 10-year-old kid, and she was just being a 10-year-old kid in an alien invasion. So, I was cutting her some slack there. They said illogical script choices was another reason. Decision to have the tripods pre-buried underground for millions of years rather than arriving entirely from space. Strained logic for a lot of fans of the original source material. I didn't mind it. I thought it was kind of cool. I liked in the news station scene whenever they're at the plane crash, when it shows, like the lady's like slowing it down for Ray to see, and it's showing all of the aliens like popping in. I thought it was actually kind of cool to think that they've been here the whole time. And then this is the one I completely disagree with. Okay. There's two more complaints that I found online. It said pace killing basement sequence, talking about the scene with Tim Robbins. No. I thought that was fantastic. That was Tim Robbins being a phenomenal actor like he is. It was Tom Cruise being a great actor like he is. And it was Dakota Fanning being a great actor like she is at such a young age. But I loved that scene. I thought that scene, yes, the movie slowed down right there, but I felt like the movie needed a slowdown. They were kind of going boom, 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 boom. And it kind of hit, I wouldn't call it a lull, but it hit like a break in the story to where, okay, now the aliens are not the only villains. We are also the villains, talking about humanity. And so like this one guy's going crazy and he's stuck down there with him and he had to make a choice. And obviously he made a choice to kill him, but he killed him to save his daughter. So it was like one of those, I can't remember what the decision is called, but it's like A Time to Kill with Samuel L. Jackson. But the original text, this one I do buy into a little bit, and it does feel a little lackluster. It's realistic, but it says just like the original text, the sudden defeat of the unstoppable aliens by bacteria felt unearned. I get it. I totally get that. Because I do remember the first time watching it being like, oh, we killed them with germs. Because we're so used to like Independence Day with the mothership or, taking them down in some grand fashion. And it was like, okay, the people actually didn't take them out. It was just germs that took them out. It was just bacteria that took them out. I love that it's a realistic finish and not a cinematic finish. I just think maybe they could have let a little more time pass by, like maybe shown 2 weeks later, 1 month later, something to that effect, as opposed to it felt very quick. But maybe our bacteria are just that bad. I don't know. One of my personal criticisms, Actually, I've got two. A couple of my personal criticisms. That weird glowing look. So, especially in the first outdoor scene, whenever Marianne arrives with the kids, like it almost gets a little distracting. But it's a deliberate choice by the cinematographer. His last name's Kaminsky. He used heavy backlighting. This is I looked it up. Like, how did he accomplish this? Heavy backlighting, intentional lens flares, and special camera filtration to create like that hazy, dreamlike atmosphere. Um, I kind of wish they wouldn't have. Like, I would have much gone for a crisper look, like maybe what you see in a lot of other Spielberg movies, or like if you go back and you watch Mission Impossible 3, has a very crisp look. I would have, I would have been more interested in that. Now, this isn't really a complaint. This is more of just a wondering before we get to some competitions. This one, I wondered, would this movie have been better if Morgan Freeman narrated throughout? Uh, Obviously, in seriousness, the answer is no, because you don't want to have narration um, like he did. I mean, he did narrate through Shawshank, but you don't want the narration here. I think it takes away from the action and the fast pace and all that stuff. But man, if you could have anybody narrate your life, Morgan Freeman has to be up there on everybody's list. Did an awesome job. It's always a fun. I forget it, and then we turn it on, and the movie starts, and the first thing you hear is Morgan Freeman's voice. Always fantastic. But getting to some competitions. Random Souvenir Award. There's not nominees. There's a clear winner for this. It was easily Rachel's third place ribbon that she keeps on her person for walk, trot, and canter. Like, that was easily the winner. I was like, whoa, where'd that come from? Now, there is competition for this one. Harlan's best quote. This is not a war any more than there's a war between men and maggots. I'm not going to be exterminated. Or, you and me, I don't think we're on the same page. All of those are great, but this is not a war any more than there's a war between men and maggots. Great line. Kind of gets used again by Loki in Avengers. He says, man has no more quarrel than an ant in a boot or something like that. Anyway, best scene competition. And there's a lot here. There's a lot of good scenes in this movie. So I love the first time that they show up. The lightning strikes, Ray and Rachel freaking out in the kitchen, and just that whole scene. And funny personal story on that one. I forgot about this. Evie, my daughter, was reminding me of this. That was actually the first time she ever cussed, was watching this. And because she asked me, she's like, would you say, and then she said a word. She said, would you say this word if we were being attacked like that? And she actually said the word as opposed to like saying the S word, which is what she was saying. It was just funny. Ray walking into the city leads to roads being torn up and the first people getting dusted, and then Tom's run to the house. So that's the second nominee. So Ray walking into the city and seeing the roads torn up, like that whole scene is awesome. The people getting dusted, which would just freak anybody out. And then we get the patented Tom Cruise run to the house. And then the next nominee, lightning attack during the night when they go to Marianne's and waking up to the plane in the neighborhood. Again, the set just makes that awesome. The ferry scene, Robbie showing that he wants to help people, but just the whole thing, like the whole action scene on the boat when they're trying to get to the boat, all that stuff. Notice I did not put the van scene in there. That one is just tough to watch every time. The Tim Robbins scene, sneaking away from the alien eye, the actual aliens showing up, and then having to take out Harlan. Just that whole scene. And then the climax of this, Ray getting himself caught to save Rachel's scene, and then blowing up the tripod. Like all those scenes, loved all those. But for me, every time, I love the effects, even though it's at the beginning of the movie, which is not usually where you find your favorite scene. I love when Ray goes into the city And apparently, when he walks outdoors, all the people that were out there, they were told to come take cameras because Tom Cruise would be out there. So that's how they got kind of a little bit of a realism with the crowd there. But I love when Ray walks into the city and it leads to the roads being torn up, just the whole thing. And we see the people getting dusted for the first time and just how freaked out he was when he gets to the house. And then, of course, the Tom run. Now, for Mount Rushmore, there was a lot of routes we could have took with this one. But I chose the Alien Invasion Mount Rushmore. All right. So on the bench, these are the movies that did not make it. They did not get chiseled in. These are the movies that are on the bench. Unfortunately, this one, War of the Worlds. I love it, but it didn't make it onto the Mount Rushmore. Mars Attacks. Love that movie. It's, Tim Burton usually does like movies that have like a IP behind them, like Alice in Wonderland, Dumbo, Batman, Sleepy Hollow, things like that. Mars Attacks was, from what I understand, an original story. There may have been something else behind there, who knows? But love that movie. It's hilarious, huge cast. Signs is on the bench, even though that is a fantastic movie. All these are, like, every one of these I love. And then The Arrival. Had not seen that one again until recently. Like, I watched it years ago, and a good friend of the show, frequent guest, Landon, is a huge fan of The Arrival. Kept talking about it, so I was like, okay, I've got to watch this. And then again, my daughter loves alien movies, so I think we watched it twice in 1 week. But it was great. So those are the four that were on the bench. The ones that made it into the game, the ones that start getting chiseled on. Avengers. And that may be a little bit of a cheat code, but there is the Chitauri at the end, which is like an alien invasion. So Avengers made it on. If you listen to the episode, you would assume this one would make it. Independence Day is in there for sure. Edge of Tomorrow, another Tom Cruise movie, and which is just crazy. And then back to back for Emily Blunt. It goes Edge of Tomorrow, Quiet Place, which is a movie that is definitely on the list to do for this. But so that's my Mount Rushmore for Alien Invasion: Avengers, Independence Day, Edge of Tomorrow, Quiet Place. But thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode. And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button to bump us up in the algorithms. You can send my dad any suggestions of movies you'd like for him to cover at themoviepick@aol.com. Thank you for listening.